Hello, viewers. Many of you will remember when back in December I was joined on the channel by Javier Ortiz, my co producer for the documentary The Truth About the Truth. In that video, we talked about our project and gave a preview of some of our footage. This time round, I'm delighted to be joined by Scott Homan, who is directing a docu-series titled XJW Coming Out, which explores the human impact of leaving the witness faith. Scott, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Lloyd. I really appreciate it. It's a cool opportunity.
Well, it's really nice to talk to you. I've been watching quite a bit of the footage that you've put out as a preview, and I know that we're going to be showing a few exclusive previews, which I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to show my audience, which we'll come to in a short while. I guess, though, you need to tell us why you have embarked on this project and what you hope to achieve.
Okay. So it's a personal project for me. I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness. So I left about 10 years ago, and I've just pursued filmmaking as kind of a hobby, and I'm somewhere in the semi-pro area, but I didn't want to tell the story in an amateur way. I wanted to do something professional, so I waited until I felt like I had the skills to do it. And I also didn't really know how I wanted to frame it, because there's all different kinds of media about ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and about Jehovah's Witnesses, and about Watchtower, Bible Tract Society publishing company. So I didn't really know where I fit in all that. And it was meeting a number of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses recently in the last couple of years, where I thought, you know what, I think I could tell a part of that story I could do it professionally, I could do it well, and it would be something I've never seen before. I wanted to do something fresh, something that was positive, and that I think that I personally would be proud of watching and saying, yeah, that I'm a part of that community, which has been hard for me to find something like that. So I met a few people that were interested in the project, and we decided to just try it. Let's just try doing an interview and see what happens. And this is the result so far.
And are you able to tell us anything about your own personal story of leaving the witnesses? I mean, you've already given us a clue that there's maybe some higher education included in there, because it's clear from the quality of what you've put out so far that you have been very well trained in cinematography and that kind of thing. But I'm interested to know what your personal story is and how that slots in.
Okay, that's actually a fun question. So as a witness, I decided to go traveling, and went with a good buddy of mine who's actually, we're going to show an exclusive clip from some travels we did together. But we went traveling through Europe for a few months, all over the place, just kind of blitzed and did the American trains around Europe, and didn't go to meetings the whole time, and it felt great. It felt really spiritual, and maybe not spiritual, but it just felt like I felt better in general about my relationship with God at that time, not being a part of the religion. Anyway, we got back from that trip, and I went to school. I went to school for photography. So I had already done a bunch with photography, with film, with actual film. And then we had a film school in our high school, and I worked at a TV station after high school for a bit as a camera person. So I had a lifelong thing going on with cameras. But I went to school to kind of become good at it. I always felt like I was trying to learn it before. So when I went to school, it was just, okay, let's start over. Let's learn cameras. And I learned photography, stills, and I worked for a studio in Minneapolis after that for a while. I worked on some weddings, which aren't my favorite thing in the world. And then there's a big break where I just traveled a lot. I even was still a witness, and I went and did the need grader thing in Ecuador, and was always shooting pictures. And then it was finally after I left the religion, I went to Vietnam with the goal of just pursuing filmmaking, just pursuing documentary. And I met a French filmmaker who's a good friend of mine. I met this New York filmmaker who taught me a ton of things about documentary film. Like watching him was this amazing education. Working with him, we worked on a Vice News project. We worked on his documentary up in the Himalayas, and he just like brought me on the team when he could, which is really cool. So I spent 4 years there doing that, and it was really fun. Like lots of music videos. I probably made like 50 or so single camera music videos, edited them rough, and just sort of trial by fire. And I realized that you need good audio for everything. You need to have good equipment for this. You need to have a better camera. You need to have good sharp lenses. And slowly I built up all that kit, and now I'm there, and I'm doing this all the time.
The expertise is there. The equipment is there. Can you put a number on it? How many years have you been in XJW for?
I left about the end of 2008, early 2009, like right there in the end of the year, in the winter, when I was living in Colorado. So 2008, right. So about 10 years.
So you've
about
actually
9
been
years.
in XJW for longer than I have, because I was an elder in 2008. So, but you've done a lot of traveling by the sounds of things.
Yeah, something like 40 countries. Some of them I traveled well and met the people, and some of them were traveling through, seeing the sights, but yeah.
Fantastic. Now, one thing that's very obvious from the footage I've seen is that you're skilled at bringing out the human stories and putting faces to a group of apostates that most of your audience simply won't have been aware of before. What kind of stories are you hoping to capture once the series is complete?
So the key thing is people who are enthusiastic about the project, who want to tell their story. That's a big part of it. And some people are really excited to be a part of this kind of activism, and also just storytelling because it's their real life. I'm not really interested in sensational things. I just want people to tell their real exit stories and their honest, like what brought them to make this huge life change and transition away from a religion and probably lose contact with all of your family members and all of your friends. That's this huge dramatic situation to be in, to put yourself in a way. And so there has to be a really good reason to do that. It's a huge, huge choice. And these people are super strong, and mentally, emotionally. And then after they've left, that's the part that really interests me is what did Jehovah's Witnesses do once they left the religion? Because they're completely detached from the people that would normally set them straight or tell them, no, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or you should do something else. In a way, like they're their own guide. They've lost all of their mentors and guides and had to stand on their own 2 feet to do whatever they wanted to do. And I met people that have done so many cool things. And a lot of them I met a lot of travelers, a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who are travelers and really just out exploring the world. And then some who've done just pursued their passions, which is really interesting.
One thing I'm actually really grateful about this project, and it's not in every interview, it's not in the interviews we're going to be looking at per se, but I like the fact that you're dealing with the sexual repression element of Jehovah's Witnesses, and particularly the challenge that's faced by those who they don't just have to think about coming out as non-believers, they also need to think about coming out as gay and how that fits into trying to find their identity. And I think that for way too long, that has been a side of the harm caused by Watchtower that has been underreported or hasn't received the attention it deserves. And so I'm glad that is a strong theme in the series that you're planning.
So I've had a lot of friends who are gay or LGBT, and I live with a lot of also LGBT people. And so I realized that the struggles they're up against are actually quite similar from the stories they've told me to what anyone who leaves this religion have to deal with. The fact that you will lose your family and friends and possibly a job and maybe even your home. You get ostracized. So they've come, well, not they, a number of LGBT people, XJW's witnesses, and just normal people have come and said like, yeah, wow, I really related to that story. So I feel like there's a chord being struck there, which is really good. And also, I mean, I knew people who were gay in the religion, and they have a whole extra set of struggles to deal with to stay in that religion. So
Yeah,
hopefully this will help some of them.
It's not something I've had to deal with, which in a way I'm thankful for. But you just can't help but feel for those who have been in that situation where it's not just a case of, hey, I don't believe anymore, but also, hey, everything you think you know about who I am sexually is wrong, and I'm actually this person instead. It's I'm really glad again that you're dealing with that. Now, as I mentioned, you've kindly agreed to let me show some exclusive footage from the series on the John Cedars channel, no less. So without further ado, we'll take a look at the first clip, which features an XJW named Ross.
So I have this friend, and he contacts me over years of time. He asks how I'm doing, and then he says, "You don't believe in Jehovah anymore." Very blunt, but you should expect that from me. Has your reading of God Delusion, which is the book, affected you? And he goes on to talk about how my beliefs are incorrect or invalidated. He says all of the fossil evidence supposedly for evolution fits into a boxcar, which I believe is not true at all. Yet hundreds of millions of fossils support the idea of nothing changing with the species. That's a slippery slope right there. This is how I responded. I said, "What seems to be the trouble? I haven't heard from you in years. Suddenly you email me blasting my choice not to believe in invisible spirit life forms. I think it was rude of you, but if you want to talk, I'm open. I can only assume you're having a crisis of faith or doubts, because I'm not supposed to be contacted according to the rules of Jehovah's Witnesses. Are you comfortable talking with me? I guess I deserve an explanation. After all, I sent every witness that mattered to me a full explanation letter of why I left that belief system." This is a rhododendron. Right here, this is a bug that's doing this. The bugs hatch from this underside vein here, and they come out and they suck all the juices out of these leaves, the chlorophyll. It doesn't really kill the plant, but it kind of just makes it really ugly and awful for a long time. Weakens the plant. I mean, plants have a lot of resilience. Witnesses seem to associate paradise with fruit, and they think God is so loving because he created these amazing fruits. It's strange, I don't get it. Almost all of the fruits and vegetables were created by humans. None of them existed in the grocery store form. They were all bred and crossbred and hybridized by humans over thousands of years, mostly in Asia, and that's true. Witnesses don't like researching anything about that, though. All the wonderful flavors and plants are human ideas come to fruition by using horticultural techniques. Nothing but humans puts food on your table. The irrigation systems, planting, harvesting, breeding, pollinating, transport to markets are completely accomplished by manpower. Jehovah never did anything for our meals. People are always praying to him about that. I don't know how or when or where the first cell of life appeared on this planet or in this universe. I'm comfortable not knowing. It's okay. It's okay to live with a little mystery. I might never know what's out there or why the universe exists. And after all, the universe is under no obligation to explain itself to me. I don't feel that conjuring an all-powerful being, loving being, has any relevance to my life.
So there were so many good things from that clip. I especially love the way that Ross was able to show through his experience the way apostates are looked down on and pitied by believing witnesses. How was it that Ross came to your attention? You mentioned that he had been involved with traveling with you. Is that right?
Yeah. So when I first moved to Minneapolis, I worked with his brother, and we used to go to comedy shows. There's this really cool comedy club in Minneapolis on Monday nights, the Acme Comedy Club. We used to go there, and then we just got to know each other and started hanging out. And pretty quickly, we were just pulling all-nighters to talk about everything in the universe. And he said he was going to Europe almost exactly the same time I was, so we decided to meet up. Actually, I went a month before him, and then I quit my job and went back and traveled with him for more months in Europe, and I blew all the money I had vagabonding around the continent. So he's an old Jehovah's Witness friend of mine. And then after that trip, we ended up living together with a couple other witnesses, where we established our drinking after the book study and analyzing the Watchtower from our own perspective, which is a fun thing that other...
Mixing Watchtower publications with alcohol sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it was a good time. People started to call us the Fringies. They thought we were a bad association because we used to talk freely about our true beliefs. And I feel like that was maybe the beginning of where we kind of established the comfortable situation where we could talk freely and openly and honestly, and started to deconstruct the religion. So Ross is one of my oldest friends. We've always kept in touch, and we probably call once a year. And he's like, "Hey, I'm going to Christmas to celebrate with all my ex-Jehovah's Witness family who've I've just discovered. Why don't we go to Christmas together?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great. Why don't I bring my camera and let's make a movie?" So all road trip stuff, all the stuff around Portland and in the volcano areas of Oregon are that road trip where we just reconnected for a couple weeks over Christmas.
Brilliant. Ross brings a very important subject to the table, I feel, in that clip, which is that of higher education and the way you are free to explore various problems with creationism once you are free to think for yourself. Were you pleased with that? How that side of the series has been explored?
So Ross is the only person who talks about so far that I've met that talks about it, higher education. And again, this series doesn't exist. We're just doing pieces of it. We're hoping to launch or begin filming the real series soon. We just got a few pieces of interviews here to show. But in terms of education, I think, yeah, he has a very positive way of viewing education, and I felt like Ross, when he exited, he was kind of just out, okay, this is the real world. I'm just going to go do my thing now. He didn't have a lot of the emotional hangups that a lot of people do as they exit or process. I don't think he had a lot of struggle deprogramming. That was what I was trying to say. And he's actually been in school a bunch of times, so even as a witness. But he's always educating himself on something, which I really appreciate about Ross.
So anyway, moving on, now it's time for our second clip in which you join Ross for a trip to the coast. Let's take a look.
Want to see the Oregon coast?
All of it.
Or the California coast?
Can't we see the whole coast?
It's a very slow drive. How about you look at a map? Do you want to go to the Oregon coast? Tell me right now.
Oregon coast.
It wasn't a functional religion to me. They're like, someday when you die, this will all be better. We could all say that at the end of the day, right? Because we're all going to die, but that's not a solution. It's not a working solution. So I was kind of pressured into auxiliary pioneering because it was the last days, and you had to like make a big effort for Jehovah, and they had this tract that they were passing out. And I remember I was talking to a woman in the door-to-door work, and I opened up the tract and I was showing her the inside of it, and I suddenly had this weird feeling that what I was showing her was completely insane. It was a 7-headed leopard beast with a crazed prostitute riding it, wearing a purple dress, and her face was smeared with blood. She's holding a golden goblet filled with the blood of all these murdered babies and people on Earth. And I had to explain this image to a perfectly innocent bystander standing at a door out of nowhere. And I just realized that if someone showed this to me and I had no idea what it was, I would think that they're totally crazy. And I had that like kind of flash reverse image going. It was just so crazy. The tract, if you read it, the language was so clear. It was, this is it. The end of the world is here. It's going to probably happen on some crazy date that everyone speculates about. And then I was just like, okay, I'm giving this last days about 6 months. If it doesn't come, I'm a total fool. I've been completely duped into handing this crap out to people at bus stops. And I'm so embarrassed that I was pressured into this as a child, and I will just walk away from it all. Which didn't actually happen that clean and neat. I wish it would have.
Now, Scott, you didn't know I was going to do this, but after I saw that clip, which by the way is just fantastic, I immediately was thinking, which tract was that he's talking about? And I figured it has to have been a Kingdom News leaflet. So then I went through my Kingdom News collection and found the very one. I don't know whether you were aware of this. The end of false religion is near. And if you go to the inside, sure enough, it has there the picture of the harlot riding the 7-headed wild beast. So,
just for my own pleasure here, does that one have a section about LGBT people in it at the end, like denouncing that? At the end,
it does actually.
Yeah, I remember that one.
It has a bit about true religion strengthens families and upholds high moral standards. I don't think it mentions. I'd have to read the whole. Tolerates immoral sex. In Western lands, church groups ordain gay and lesbian members of the clergy and urge governments to recognise same-sex marriages. This is ironic. Even churches that condemn immorality have tolerated religious leaders who have sexually abused children.
Oh, wow.
So that's...
wow, their
that's
own literature.
Leaflet, which was actually printed in 2006.
Yes, exactly.
So,
that's the one. That's exactly the one.
So 12 years ago, we were warning that the end of false religion is near. Not that near, if we're being honest, in retrospect. So anyway, not many documentaries are able to delve into doctrinal absurdities with such deftness and subtlety. Will tactfully showing the absurdity of witness beliefs be a recurring theme in this series?
Good question. So I have a very open kind of interview style when I'm interviewing people, because every ex-Jehovah's Witness has their own reasons that the way that they came out, the pathway out. And some of it was doctrinal, some of it's lifestyle, some of it's horrible situations like suicide. And I don't want to dictate or get someone to say something about the Watchtower or not. In this case, that particular thing really bothered Ross. And it was one of those moments where he really self-reflected. And I think it's important for him. So it's important for his story. And that's the thing we're trying to do, is capture that person's story. I don't want to input anything into their story. They're telling their story.
Yeah.
It's a tell-all.
No, I know what you
Yeah.
mean. It's kind of an organic process, and it helps that it's an organic process because there's nothing feigned about it. It's just him saying, "Look, we distributed this absolutely crazy leaflet, and when I had to show the householder this bonkers picture of a prostitute riding a 7-headed leopard, something snaps, and I realised I couldn't do this any longer."
Yeah.
A really, really compelling story. It's also clear from the clip that you had plenty of fun during filming, or is that just clever editing?
Oh, I mean, Ross is one of my best friends, and we've traveled together a lot, so we had tons of fun doing it. I mean, we were camping along the way and had copious amounts of alcohol to to do these stories. Also, I mean, we had a great time. It was great.
Fantastic. Now, moving on, we can take a look at another clip in which an ex-Jehovah's Witness musician in a metal band talks about demons.
Oh, fuck yeah!
But I was like, oh, my parents never had something like that.
Rolling. Demons. They're everywhere.
What do witnesses believe about demons? What did you believe about demons?
Well, that was the most terrifying thing in the world, is because demons were everywhere. So that dictated what you could watch and listen to and read and buy. They wholeheartedly believed that demons attached themselves to books, objects, places, people, music. That became kind of their folklore, their ghost stories, I guess. I remember going camping with a bunch of friends, and we didn't tell ghost stories, we told demon stories, and there was inevitably a moment in all of that when somebody would chime in and say, "You guys, we shouldn't be talking about this," because just talking about demons, we're inviting demons into your life. So after all that conditioning, it got pretty terrifying because he started to believe it. It was even after I left that I was still afraid. I was still afraid that, maybe even more afraid that I was inviting demons into my life. I think it's a bit ridiculous now, but back then it was a real fear.
We got no time for their game. We got no time for their game. We got no time for their game.
What about angels?
Angels were... It's interesting because they spent a lot more time talking about demons than they did angels.
Everybody fucking give it up for Flight Kamikaze. Holy shit. I fucking love those guys.
So Scott, this clip brilliantly explores an aspect of being a JW that you don't really think about, that of the paranoia surrounding demons. Was it your idea to talk about this, or was it genuinely something that troubled Alexei?
So, I mean, Alexei wears all black. He's in a punk metal band. He's in a couple bands. He books bands. He works the door at a live music venue. Naturally, people would say, oh, he's demonic, or witnesses would say he's on the dark side. But Alexei's a product of the environment he grew up in. And so we talked about, on just over beers, and then also in our interview at length. This is just one small clip, but we talked at length about how metal are the Jehovah's Witnesses. And then we started talking about like what album covers from metal bands are almost as dark as Jehovah's Witnesses' own literature, and doomsday things that they teach their children about God killing everyone and the genocide that's about to come that everyone's so excited and happy about. like the God Jehovah and his slave Jesus are going to murder everyone on earth except for Jehovah's people. So, and the kind of pictures that they paint are so crazy. So it's just a natural question for me to Alexi, like, what about the dark side has affected you? What about the dark things about Jehovah's Witnesses have affected you today and shaped who you are and your music? So that was part of that clip.
Yeah, it was a really strong, powerful piece, perfectly highlighting, like I say, the paranoias and fears that can stay with you long after you've left. It's also nice to see an XJW moving on with his life and doing something creative that he loves. Can we expect to see more of this kind of metamorphosis in other interview subjects?
Absolutely. I feel like that piece really pulls together a lot of my skill sets, and my passion is to work with musicians and artists and show how they've explored art and creativity. And I love to show that kind of environment as well. Like, that's just people having a good time. I've been into punk rock and heavy music from as long as I can remember, even as a witness. And those are some of the nicest people on earth. They're genuine, they're honest, they have nothing to hide, and they'll pick you up if you fall down in the mosh pit. Like Alexi's crew of people are super sweet, super nice people.
I can't say I've fallen down in that many mosh pits in my time, but I'll take your word on that one. Anyway, it's time for our final clip, in which an XJW named Miranda tells a disturbing story about suicide.
Did you talk about telling your parents, telling your sibling that you no longer believed?
When I was going to therapy, the first person that I told that I didn't want to be a part of this religion anymore was my therapist. Aside from my mentor, was my therapist. And she was kind of point blank about it. I never really thought about it that way, because it's this whole procedure when you want to leave of, like, you could be disfellowshipped, you have to be inactive, and it's this whole procedure. And when I told my therapist, like, hey, I don't want to be a part of this religion anymore, it's draining me, it's making me depressed, it's making me suicidal, and she just said, well, then why go anymore? And it's like, it's a good question. It's like, well, my parents are involved, and my brother's involved, and he's trying to be a ministerial servant, and I don't want to disappoint my parents. And she just kind of looked at me and was like, why does it matter? Like, when are you going to start thinking about yourself and put yourself first? She's like, are you going to wait until you're dead and you haven't had quality life before it's too late to do anything about it? I got overly zealous at that point, and I told both my parents that I was not interested anymore, that I didn't want to do it. And they called the therapist and were like, what are you telling our daughter? You are corrupting her. This is not what we pay you for. We are paying you to get her back in the faith, not to leave it. So she lied and told them, oh yeah, no, I'm helping her to be a better Jehovah's Witness and a better daughter. So we met in secret, and from then on, anything that we talked about was confidential, like it should have been from day one, but it was like even more confidential, and we just devised a plan to help me escape, basically. Because the oppression at home my home life became brutally hostile at that point when I said that I wanted to leave. My mother basically said I was better off killing myself than having God kill me at Armageddon.
Will you say that again?
Yeah. So when I told my parents that I wanted to leave, my mother said that I was better off killing myself and committing suicide than waiting for God to destroy me at Armageddon.
And what was your response to that?
I didn't have one at that point. I didn't have an answer for her. I was kind of baffled at the fact that she had made that statement, and it made me even more confident in my decision to leave, because these people, at that point I realized that these people were crazy. You can't say one thing off the platform and one thing to your neighbors and tell your daughter something else. That's not real love. That's conditional love.
So this was an incredibly moving and powerful interview that I'm sure many watching this will relate to. It's also clear from your reaction that you were taken aback by just how brutal Miranda's parents were.
Yeah. Miranda's pretty excited to work with us. It was this fortunate situation where she was local and she was just on board right away. I had no idea about her story. So when she said that, we're like, wow, we could just finish the interview now. I mean, we got what I've never heard that story. So that was just really powerful.
That she'd already dealt with feelings of depression and suicide, and that's the reason she was going to the therapist. You know, presumably her parents were picking up the tab for her to have this therapy. And then to say something like that to her. It's like, why are you even investing that money in the first place if you're going to turn around and say something like that?
Yeah, and I think that really reveals the depths that people are willing to believe these outrageous fantasies about this religion, that this religion's teaching through their publications. And it's not the first time I've heard the idea that you are better off committing suicide before Armageddon, but I've never conceived of a parent telling their own child that. That blows my mind, and I hope it wakes someone up someday, because that's just madness. It's crazy.
And it's disturbing to think that if you've managed to just kind of happen upon that story in your creative process, it makes me wonder how many more stories like that are out there.
Exactly.
And how many of those stories resulted in someone actually committing suicide. So, obviously there's still a lot of stigma these days surrounding depression and suicide, and it's rare that someone is willing to open up on camera about having that kind of experience. Do you have any other subjects who can talk along those lines about mental health?
Wow. Well, yeah, there's a lot of people who have been writing to me. I have this, because I've been doing the campaign that we're in right now, people from all over the world have been reaching out with stories that I can't even begin to understand about multiple suicides, multiple deaths, blood transfusion deaths, like being disowned completely after something tragic like that. And being beaten by their elder husband, you know, all these crazy stories, and some people have all of those things in their past as a witness. So yeah, Miranda, I mean, she just happened to be local, happened to be right here and ready to go. And it was completely random. I had no idea, but there are so many stories like that. It's crazy.
And
I can't even.
Obviously, I'm asking you that as someone who's involved in a different project, but in a way it's kind of linked, because we've already talked about the fact that we're looking at kind of collaborating between our two projects, but we've encountered some really heart-wrenching stories. It literally is just a case of putting the call out and then bracing yourself for some of the horror stories that get sent through. It's astonishing. So the more projects there are like yours that are shining a light on this, the better. And again, I think that your unique creative style lends itself very well to the subject matter. Now, just to kind of, I'm anxious to kind of get down to the question that a lot of viewers will be thinking of, it's clear from the few clips that we've seen that you've invested an incredible amount of time, energy, and money into what you've accomplished so far. So what do you need in order to move things forward?
Okay, so I started the project as a side project, personally funding it. I flew back to Vietnam just to focus on editing. It was like a cheap place to live and just stay focused, to do the teaser. And so the stuff that you're being shown right now on this channel is new, and it's from Colorado and the States. And I've done it during the campaign or just before. What we need is to do this properly. We need to get the funds that it costs to make film. And that's travel costs, a bit of living costs, a little bit of equipment costs. We need a couple people, because doing this on my own with a single camera, it's not as good as having double camera coverage. So all my interviews now are going to be double camera. And I want to go far. I want to show these perspectives from a global lens. Like this religion writes and speaks 800 languages. That's incredible. It's amazing. But so do the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and so do these exit stories and these shunned stories and these suicide stories and murder stories by blood transfusion. I mean, all the same. We're in every place on earth, and I think that it's important to show that global aspect of this activism and this struggle, and also that's an amazing opportunity to show off culture and the diversity of culture and racial diversity and sexual diversity and age diversity in all these places, and take people on a travel adventure. I want to make that. I want to show that. I want people to see that and realize that not only is this an incredible community of people who support each other, but it's also this like oppressive, evil corporation who's ruining families and destroying culture everywhere they go. So there is an angle there of activism and something I want to change in the world. But really, I want to tell stories, and I want people to have a voice that they've never had before.
So with all that said, I'm anxious to get to the bottom of the crowdfunding element. And obviously I already mentioned I've had Javier on the channel, and we have discussed the problems behind pursuing funding when you're dealing with a community that's very wary of money and the mismanagement of money. Because as Jehovah's Witnesses, we were trained to think that we should give everything for free, we should do everything on a voluntary basis. We get out of the organisation and we find out that the organisation has been misspending money that we thought had been donated to the worldwide work. Instead, it gets spent on settling child abuse cases and whatnot. So there's a great deal of mistrust among ex-witnesses, much of which is understandable, but much of which is quite frankly hang-ups when it comes to money, and an assumption that things should just be kind of done for free. Have you encountered any kind of pushback when it comes to trying to raise money for this project?
I think there is some reluctance there for people to contribute because probably for some of those reasons you just mentioned. But the reality is, to spend the time I've already built the expertise up, and also to spend the time doing it professionally, it's still a lot of costs involved there. And I mean, that's just the fact. If you want something quality, it's going to cost money. And that's where we are. So yeah, that's why we've put out the reach out to the community to see if does the community care, and if so, please help us create this together by supporting us financially.
And what we've seen is high quality, and that's not to knock other videos and YouTubers just doing what they can from their bedrooms, or that there's a place for that, and we all need that. We need people just coming forward and sitting in front of their webcam and telling their story. But I think personally that we also need to be able to take things to the next level. We need things to be done on a more professional level. And it is unfair, I think, to just expect people to do this for free. I would consider it an insult if I was to turn around to you and say, Scott, you need to make this film for free. You should be financing it out of your own pocket, because I would be telling you that your time doesn't count for anything, and you don't deserve a life outside of this project. So I agree that I think we've reached the stage with the movement where we do need to kind of take things to the next level. And unfortunately, that involves money. So where are you up to at the moment with your crowdfunding? Are you able to tell us in terms of numbers?
Yeah. So
how much further you need to go?
So we're halfway through the campaign. It's 4 weeks long. So we're at the 2-week mark, the halfway mark. And the goal is $9,000. And we have to hit $7,200 to be green lighted, which means we get the money. If we don't hit that mark, we get zero. And right now we're at 2,000. So we're about 20% is about where we're at. And if we hit 30%, this sort of momentum happens, where not just XJW's Witnesses or whoever's paying attention, but like anyone on the crowdfunding network will start to see the campaign and say, oh, that's got momentum behind it. Let's start contributing. So if we can hit that 30% mark early, and we're running out of time for that, there will be this sort of pickup that will get us to the goal. And I think there's still a chance. We're not quite where we should be, but the ramp is moving up. We could meet the mark, but we need the support. The other thing that's really important here.
Go on.
The other thing that's really important here is we launched it when we did early for a very particular reason, because the Case for Optimism is a partner campaign at Seed and Spark that is a grant access for us. We launched as a part of that. So every contribution you make, if it's $10, it's worth at least 30 or 40, because we have a really high chance of getting that grant money. And that grant money is actually $25,000 to $250,000. It's this amazing opportunity. So if we can hit this small number, we will could be set for a couple of years, and be able to do a lot more and go a lot farther and capture more stories. So now is a really cool opportunity to be a part of this.
It is, and I would urge as many of those watching as possible to get behind this project, because again, we need to take this to the next level, and we need to show these stories and show people that this is a problem. And because quite frankly, outside of our community and outside of Jehovah's Witnesses, people are oblivious to this. People just assume that Jehovah's Witnesses are a benign group that bothers you on a Saturday morning. They don't understand what's involved in leaving. They don't understand the abuse. So it really is important to get behind it. Are you able to explain a little bit about what your hopes are in terms of distribution?
So that's a great question. Right now, we're guaranteeing that we will make a download available to people who are contributing at that level. And Seed and Spark offers a really cool system. So if we get the green light, we get the funding, there's an option for us to opt in to allow them to stream it on their platform, which is just like Netflix. And they use Roku, which is a pretty famous platform for streaming media. And it pays $1 per minute for every view, but it's actually really affordable. It's like $6 a month to see all of their media content. So that's one option we're considering, but that's open because the film doesn't exist yet. So it's hard to say, but I do want to guarantee to everyone that contributes, you will be able to see the thing we're creating. And hopefully everyone will have access to it. Even if they can't contribute now, they could stream it later. We're hoping to do the Seed and Spark stream, unless we come up with a better option.
Fantastic. Well, the more exposure it can get, the better.
Yeah.
But I'm very grateful to you for allowing me to show those clips. I think they're very powerful and very compelling, as I've already mentioned. And I just wish you all the best with this project. And thank you so much for coming on the channel and talking about it.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
So viewers, I will make sure, of course, that there are links in the description if you want to jump on the campaign and throw your support behind it, which I would heartily encourage that you do. But I really hope that you have found this interview fun. I know I have, and I've certainly enjoyed again showing that wonderful footage. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and as always, thank you for watching.